How exactly did Iran launch a surprise ballistic missile attack against U.S. bases in the Middle East? Well, it all started underground. Iranian forces used a network of hidden bunkers to execute a lightning-fast shoot-and-scoot strategy. They launched a coordinated two-stage assault. The first wave of ballistic missiles was aimed straight at U.S. bases in Iraq, while a second wave targeted Jordan at the exact same time. But Iran didn't stop there. They also activated their proxy forces to strike Saudi Arabia and their highly valuable assets. In response, the U.S. and Saudi Royal Air Force launched a historic, coordinated counterstrike of its own, and their plan also relied heavily on the element of surprise. Striking from the south, the U.S. launched A-18 Super Hornets, while the E A-18 Growlers pushed north along with these ground attack aircrafts, covering thousands of miles, hitting Iranian and Iraqi militants. So, what exact strategy did Iran use to target U.S. bases in Saudi Arabia? To understand the mechanics of the July 30th strike, you have to look at the launch sequence. Iran didn't rely on proxies or slow-moving kamikaze drones. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps unleashed a coordinated two-vector ballistic missile barrage directly from Iranian soil. The sequence started deep underground, inside subterranean bases carved into the Zagros Mountains. Mobile transporter erector launchers TEL were loaded with solid-fuel ballistic missiles. Using solid fuel is a critical tactical advantage. It means the missiles are stored pre-fueled and ready to fire, eliminating the hours of vulnerable prep time required for liquid-fueled rockets. The TELs drove to the surface, elevated their payloads, and executed a shoot-and-scoot maneuver, firing their weapons before U.S. early warning satellites could lock onto their pre-launch thermal signatures. Vector 1 was aimed at Iraq, launching from the western Kermanshah province. The IRGC fired a barrage of Fateh and Qiyam short-range ballistic missiles. This missile carries a 500-kilogram high-explosive warhead and reaches hypersonic speeds in its terminal phase. Crossing the border in minutes, these munitions targeted Al-Assad Air Base in the western desert and coalition hubs in Erbil. Vector 2 was designed to hit much further west. To reach the U.S. and Saudi aircrews at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, Iran deployed its Khyber Shaikan medium-range ballistic missiles, launched from central Iran to keep the TELs out of immediate counter-strike range. These missiles arced high into the exosphere. They traveled over 600 miles, flying completely across the breadth of Iraqi airspace in the upper atmosphere, before re-entering on a steep, high-velocity trajectory toward the Jordanian base. The defense response had to be instantaneous. As soon as the Iranian missiles broke the horizon, space-based inferred system satellites detected the massive heat plumes of the solid rocket boosters. That telemetry was instantly beamed to U.S. Central Command, which initiated a layered defense net. Over Jordan, the U.S. utilized the more advanced THAAD system. THAAD powerful andThe radar tracked the Khyber Shaikan missiles as they descended from the exosphere, launching its own interceptors to destroy the Iranian warheads in the upper atmosphere. Miles above the runways of Muwafaq Salti. And interestingly, Saudi Arabia was also attacked by Iran-aligned militias in Iraq, launched a coordinated wave of over 30 aerial drone attacks, targeting U.S. forces and critical Saudi energy infrastructure. But over a 72-hour period in July 2026, those rules were completely rewritten. The United States and Saudi Arabia conducted one of the first joint strikes. To understand why this happened, we have to look at the 48 hours prior. Between July 26th and 28th, a coordinated wave of over 30 kamikaze drones flooded the airspace. Their targets? American forces and critical Saudi energy grids. The attacks were launched by the PMF, the Popular Mobilization Forces. On paper, they are an Iraqi state-sponsored paramilitary group. In reality, several of its most powerful factions are direct proxies of Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So what strategy did the US and Saudi actually attack the Iranian? To map out the operational mechanics of the July strikes, you have to view the strategy as a multi-axis attack. The objective was to overwhelm the PMF and Iranian early warning radar networks by striking simultaneously from 3 different geographical vectors. The operation was split into 2 phases. Vector 1 came from the south, the Naval Strike Package. To avoid the heavily monitored and congested airspace of the Persian Gulf, the U.S. Navy projected power from the outside. Launching from the USS Abraham Lincoln in the North Arabian Sea, A-18 Super Hornets and E A-18 Growlers flew north. They covered around 1,000 miles, crossing friendly Omani and Saudi airspace before entering Iraq from the south. Vector 2 struck from the west, the U.S. Air Force package. Launching from Muwafaq's Salti Air Base in Jordan, the 10 Warthogs pushed directly east across the border. They utilized the desolate western Iraqi desert to mask their approach from low-altitude radar. After traveling over 500 miles, they popped up to release their munitions over central and northern logistics hubs in Baghdad and Nineveh. Vector 3 closed the trap from the east, the Royal Saudi Air Force package. Launching from bases in Dhahran and Al-Kharj, Saudi F-15s and Eurofighter Typhoons crossed directly into Iraqi airspace. With a much shorter distance to southern targets like Basra, the Saudi jets could carry maximum weapons payloads without relying heavily on external drop tanks. This allowed them to linger in the airspace longer, providing combat air patrol and escort duties for the incoming U.S. aircraft. But the most complex part of this entire strategy was the time on target. Despite launching from a carrier in the Arabian Sea, a base in the Jordanian desert, and airfields in eastern Saudi Arabia, the flight plans were meticulously calculated. The U.S. aircraft and the Saudi jets all crossed into their engagement zones at the exact same minute. This perfect synchronization prevented the enemy from realizing the scale of the attack until the munitions were already in the air, creating an overwhelming shock and awe effect. So how did the U.S. use the other military assets for its largest revenge attack against Iran? Well, the U.S. strategy is to completely dismantle the Iranian coastline. The first wave, slicing the west of the country, and the strikes began at this area. The tip of the spear belonged to stealth. U.S. Air Force F-35, a Lightning II, slipped past early warning radars to suppress enemy air defenses, clearing the corridors for heavy payloads delivered by B-2 Spirit bombers and F-15E Strike Eagles. The strikes began in the west, targeting the surface-to-air missile batteries and coastal surveillance networks guarding the region's critical infrastructure. With the radar shield pierced, the assault moved south to Bandar Abbas. From standoff ranges, U.S. aircraft deployed the GM-158 cruise missiles, obliterating command and control networks. At the Strait of Hormuz waterline, the U.S. wants to degrade the Iranian Mosquito boats fleets guarded by Zu-23 autocannons on the piers. As American F-15 Strike Eagles approached, the manual anti-aircraft guns fired blindly into the night, aiming at ghosts. From miles above and safely out of range, the jets released a swarm of GBU-39 small-diameter bombs. Because these glide bombs are so compact, a single F-15 could assign a unique GPS coordinate to every single boat and gun emplacement in one devastating pass. In minutes, the harbor was reduced to a burning graveyard, completely neutralizing the swarm before a single boat could reach open water. Further east at the port city of Sirak, the mission shifted to neutralizing immediate threats to commercial shipping. The U.S. dropped 500-pound JDAMs using the F-15E Strike Eagle on hardened military logistics infrastructure and coastal surveillance assets tucked into the rugged coastline. By destroying these launch sites, the U.S. effectively degraded Iran's ability to enforce a blockade on the 21-mile-wide maritime choke point. Then there is Konarak and Chabahar. Deep into the east, the offensive didn't stop at the Strait of Hormuz. It extended deep into the Gulf of Oman, striking the southern port cities of Konarak and Chabahar in Sistan and Baluchistan province. The jets then dropped GBU-39s as explosions tore through missile sites. For more original videos, check out the links here.